£24 million that derives from the core news agency in the centre. Around half of these sources of revenue come from the supply of data. So they're derived from the supply of data, be that racing data, sports data, TV data. And then the other half we call services, and they are loosely can be categorized as the supply of marketing and communication services to non-media clients, so to brand clients and to corporates. There's a trend, actually, you can see over the last few years for the proportion of revenue to the group that comes from these data and services business to increase in relation to the proportion from the core news agency, which is labelled here as content. Some of these diversified businesses relate very directly to the activities of the core news agency, such as the supply of images or the provision of sports data. Others bear no relation really at all directly to the activities of the core news agency, but they are complementary. To give you an example, Stream AMG is a business acquired by PA in 2017. It provides online video technology. It supports live streaming of video content, the distribution of that live stream content, and its monetization. Its biggest clients are some of the largest sports clubs in the world, including Champions League winners, Liverpool FC. Go Liverpool. Since the acquisition by PA, they've also now started to branch out into services for media, not surprisingly, including the likes of the BBC. The two businesses I look after are Sticky Content and TNR, and they provide creative marketing and PR services to brand and corporate clients, some of the largest brands in the UK, such as Coca-Cola UK. And you can see here an example of a recycling campaign that we created for Coke, which started out on social and ended up on the large screen at Piccadilly Circus, which is quite unusual for us. And we create bespoke content for clients, and I thought that the best way to explain to you what we do is simply to show you a few examples of the work. So humour me, and I will show you some of the things that we've done and for some of the clients that we've done it for. So here you can see an example of some Instagram content that was created for a wine client, Ian Gallo. So those actually are little GIFs that should play but don't play. We create a lot of GIFs for Instagram. Instagram is a big growing channel for us, and a lot of clients are prepared to spend quite a lot of money for us to create little visual stories that they push out with paid promotion. You can see on the next slide oh, here we go, it does play. There we are. This is what storytelling has become. On the next slide, you can see a cinemagraph that we created for a gin brand. We do a lot of little things called cinemagraphs. We seem to have a propensity to acquire alcohol clients. I'm not quite sure where that comes from. It's nothing to do with me. On the next slide, this is a campaign we created for Facebook for our client Stabilo, who make pens. It was aimed at students to help them with their revision under the hashtag #MakeYourMark. So we are devising the strategy for these campaigns and creating the content and distributing the content on behalf of the client. So it's not journalism, it's creative marketing, but we do have some former journalists within the team who were previously within the core news agency. And long-form web content too, so not just social content. So this is an interactive game created for the defence manufacturer Kinetic, who are a client of ours, and it was a spying game designed to attract and select the next generation of intelligence recruits for the Royal Navy. So that was a very fun one to work on. And of course, video. So where would we be without video? TNR is a broadcast PR agency that creates a lot of video, a lot of brand storytelling video. I'm going to play you a little clip, which is a film we created for Land Rover, which has just won Gold Award at the UK Brand Film of the Year Awards. So I'll just play that for you now. She says confidently.
I was doing a presentation for the 70th anniversary of Land Rover, and suddenly this very charming lady came up and said, "Oh, I've got some old photos from back in the day."
I just sort of showed him this photograph. And I couldn't believe the reaction.
And I said, well, you know who owns that Land Rover, don't you? She said, no idea. I said, I do. We're going to take this Land Rover, number 16 off the production line, to Dorothy Peters, who used to work with this vehicle in the service department 70 years ago.
So there you go. That's the kind of stories that we're telling on behalf of brands. Some editorial skills come into play, sometimes more often than not. And collectively, this is the type of work that has allowed Sticky Content and TNR to forecast 20% revenue growth this year back to the PA group. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Any questions for Emily? Uffe.
Yes, thank you. Just one question. When you are in the business of, as an advertising agency, among other things, going to the end consumer, doesn't that affect your relationship to the media, who are now your competitors?
No, I suppose because the media directly aren't necessarily competitors, because we're not receiving the client's media spend, so we're not receiving their advertising spend, we're receiving their creative budget, which is different. And actually, certainly in the UK, not many of the major media publishers would ever receive any creative budget. They'd simply get paid for the space. So no, and actually we operate very separately within the group, so we're a separate limited company within the group. We have a kind of separate office from the main editorial newsroom, and we actually rarely come across each other. So we're very distinct in that sense.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Emily. And now I'll hand you over to Awais from the Pakistani news agency, PPI.
Thank you, Clive. And how does this work? I press
Press the right-hand button. The right-hand button to go forwards.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to thank the BTA for the excellent arrangements and for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about what PPI has done to remain viable in these rapidly moving times. PPI, as some may know, is Pakistan's oldest independent news agency. It is registered as a private limited company. It has been serving all major media outlets in Pakistan since 1956. It is now about 63 years old. It has services including English, Urdu language news services, and photo service. Like many news agencies, PPI business model was flawed. We had very limited revenue sources and were almost entirely dependent on media subscribers for income. And as all of us know, media outlets are rather reluctant to pay proper rates to news agencies. And this meant that we were always financially challenged, and because we were financially challenged, our ability to negotiate was further diminished. It's a catch-22 situation that we all face, that we all know so well. The challenges as a result of ICT, I think all of a sudden the ICT revolution got us unprepared, and the drastic reduction in cost of news distribution led to increased competition and a mushroom growth of news agencies. And again, I think you'll find this similar in many countries, especially many developing countries. And some news agencies in the initial period were financially supported by political parties or groups, and they could thus offer their services at very low cost or even for free. and further bureaus and correspondents of newspapers could send news more cheaply, and that reduced the need for agency copy. Also, Pakistan is among the countries where there is very weak enforcement of copyright, and now as people had web editions, publications and other websites that were not subscribers could simply cut and paste from the websites and use them without having to pay news agencies. These, of course, reduced the financial sustainability of PPI, of the news agency, but there were positive opportunities that were offered by the ICT revolution as well. The dramatic reduction which led to increased competition also led to a dramatic reduction for ourselves and eliminated the exorbitant cost of teleprint lines. I'm not sure if there are many old enough to remember the cost. That cost of teleprint line was the single most biggest item of expense for news agencies. The reduced distribution costs meant that and digitalization and reduced distribution costs meant that we could offer our services beyond national borders. So, for example, our news services are available in many countries of the world. And news services became possible because of digitalization of content production. This is nothing new. All of us have gone through the same thing. And how we then what saved PPI or what led to new revenue sources was that we were able to leverage our deep links going back many decades with the media to initiate news services. And I'll give you just two examples of those. In 1990, Australian Associated Press facilitated the creation of the AsiaNet Consortium to distribute press releases across Asia. And that generated quite a bit of revenue for us, and PPI became the founding member of the AsiaNet Consortium to distribute press releases. And later, we expanded this to beyond the national borders. So that is an important source of incremental of revenue for us. The second does it? Yeah. The second service that we started also was distribution of news content to international databases. Again, AAP facilitated the creation of Asia Pulse to provide news from Asian news agencies to international databases. PPI, along with several agencies, provided news feeds to international databases via Asia Pulse. And when Asia Pulse ceased operation, PPI started providing similar services to news agencies and newspapers that had been working with Asia Pulse. And we then expanded to offer similar services to newspapers and to magazines as well. Today, AsiaNet, a subsidiary of PPI, distributes content to over 300 newspapers and news agencies and magazines to international databases. This service provides incremental revenue to news agencies and increases the impact beyond the national borders. However, it requires quite a bit of patience as revenue increases slowly over time and is an incremental revenue, not a major source of revenue. But we need all sources of revenue in today's world. So now I have three recommendations for the leadership of news agencies that are gathered here. First of all, I think for generating future revenue and for safeguarding our revenues, first of all, I think news agencies, maybe we can set up some mechanism to monitor copyright infringements. I come up from a country where there is no concept of copyright. There is no accountability. You can just cut and paste the content. And so if that happens, why would anyone by news services. And so I think there is a need to work with national publishers organization and to have campaigns to change the image of the copyright infringers as sort of Robin Hood figures that are taking something from the rich, and anyway, it's published, so what do they have to lose by it? And I think that is something that a lot of effort needs to be done, because although there has been a mushroom growth of newspapers and of website in my country and in many other countries, we have not benefited from it, because the content can just be, and not just news agency content, any content can just be cut and paste onto the new websites. And one of the services that we are just about to launch is copyright management service. And our first task will be to make the producers of content understand that this is your product and somebody is stealing your product. You have to take better care of it. And I hope that that is something that will help us in two ways. First, generate additional revenue through the service, but more importantly, then our content will be protected and there will be better safeguarding of content. The second suggestion for me is for organizations of news agencies, especially regional organizations of news agencies, should focus on efforts to improve financial viability. I must compliment the organizers of this this conference of focusing directly on financial issues. I think some of the regional news agencies organizations should do the same and not focus so much on the ideological basis and on ceremonial issues, but talk about issues that affect the people directly, the news agencies directly, the financial viability. This should be reflected in the program. This is an excellent program, I think, the best I've been to for many years. And I think we need to take what we have learned from here back to our own regional news agencies organizations. Third, and I think, and finally, my final suggestion is that of all the sectors of the media, news agencies are the one with the longest history of international cooperation. I think right from the 50s, 1956, when we were started, within a few years we had cooperative agreements with dozens of news agencies, bilateral agreements. But except for the commercial agreements that we had with DPA, we were the first, PPI was the first Asian partner of DPA. Apart from the commercial agreements from DPA and the Associate Press, the other bilateral agreements remained more aspirational rather than practical. And this commercial agreements, commercial cooperation between the international news agencies and the national news agencies was beneficial for both in two ways. First of all, it increased the revenue for international news agencies. We purchased their news services. It increased revenue for us because then we sold their services to our subscribers. The second great benefit was that as we were working with international news agencies on a regular basis, and we were having visits from them, and we were visiting them, it created common understanding of the workflows, common understanding of the deadlines, common understanding of the news values. And so when a community of newspapers that came, each one of us had a good understanding of what, and we could talk to each other. Ironically, as the information technology revolution occurred, although it gave the technical capacity to cooperate much better. In practicality, what had happened is those linkages have been loosened and diluted to a great extent, to a point where I think now it has come where the only way we get to know about what the new developments are in coming to such conferences and finding out. There isn't this regular cooperation on a daily basis and on things like that. So as the, I think, experiment with the Asia Pulse and with AsiaNet has shown, that mutually beneficial, I think we need efforts to develop more mutually beneficial arrangements that will require between news agencies of the developing countries, of the third world, and the international news agencies. And here I would like to make a plea that the leadership on this should fall on the major international news agencies. I think there is a great deal to be gained from better cooperation between the international news agencies and the national news agencies. And of course, we need to get more serious about making the bilateral arrangements that we have between developing countries more than just aspirational, but also to put practical shape to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Awais. Questions? Okay, maybe I kick off on a question there. We have representatives of the three big international agencies in the room today. Eric, do you want to pick up on the basically what Awais was saying about the falling away of the collaboration between the big international agencies and the agencies in the developing world?
I mean, excuse me, AFP. I mean, we've had partnerships. We continue to have partnerships around the world. So I mean, this is nothing new in Pakistan as well. So I mean, it depends on the nature of the partnership. So obviously, I mean, we did with you when you were in Australia, Clive. You know. So yeah, I mean, I think, and I talk about this when I talk about fake news. I think in general collaboration in this climate and partnerships is very important, you know. So I take the point. Yep.
Thank you, Eric. Does any of the other international agencies want to?
Each international agency has its own standards, more or less similar. So there are a couple of factors, several factors, which must be taken into account before entering such a sort of cooperation. But of course, it's good. It's a good cooperation. I'm not sure how much of the revenue gained by the local agency by cooperating with an international agency comes from the local market and how much comes from this cooperation. I guess the cooperation with the international agency is not such a big percentage of your revenue.
I'm going to address it directly in a couple of minutes.
Awais, do you want to say anything more?
No, I think you are right. They do exist. What I was talking about was that first it used to go through all international traffic used to go through national, and now it goes directly to newspapers in the developing countries, as it should be. There is no issue with that. But I think national news agencies, and so national news agencies have sort of lost their value, basically, for the international news agencies. And I think that might be a short-sighted view. I think the depth of understanding that national news agencies have, your bureaus in those countries cannot make up for the vast coverage that is there. And over the long year term, I think it's going to weaken the coverage and the understanding that the people have of the countries that you're covering. So I know I have no solution. It's something that needs to a little bit to think about as to how we can develop those linkages again. And they should be mutually beneficial. So I'm not asking for, so that's it.
Thank you, Awais. Perhaps before we move on to our third speaker, the key in your presentation, Awais, was that you were generating good revenue from taking company announcements and delivering them across your network to media in Pakistan. And it strikes me that particularly for our colleagues in the news agencies from the less developed markets that are looking for new revenue opportunities, press release distribution, corporate announcement distribution could be a very interesting new business opportunity. We have in the room the head of the Australian news agency, who was telling me the other evening that their press release distribution business is growing very quickly. I wonder, Bruce, perhaps you could just give people an insight into how that business works?
Yeah, thanks, Clive. Look, I think, we have a very strong domestic press release distribution business in Australia, and I know many other agencies around the world have similar businesses. But as I always mentioned, we're also involved in the AsiaNet distribution network, as are many agencies in this room. And we've forged strong partnerships with some of the larger international press release distribution companies such as Cision. And that business, in some ways, it's against all the odds in some ways, because it's actually much easier for a lot of corporates and to do some of these things themselves, but they are increasingly turning to the large distribution platforms to make that a much more seamless process. And I think we've been benefiting from that. So, and also adding in social media platforms in terms of distributing content and announcements is a new source of revenue and an additional source of revenue to that traditional press release distribution. I think your point is right. There is great opportunities, particularly in the less developed world, where some of these emerging corporations in those countries would be looking for this sort of service. So if there is, I think that there's certainly worth looking around, in your countries where there is an opportunity to potentially embrace these sorts of services.
Thank you, Bruce. And it's worth stressing that may be international companies that simply want to communicate their message to the media in Namibia or the Congo or other parts of the world, which they, when they're sitting in their offices in London or in New York, would find as a very complex challenge. So I'm sure Bruce or other people in the room that have those businesses would be happy to provide more information if it's of interest to anybody. Okay, any other questions before we...
Shukran. Aloui from the Tunisian News Agency. I just wanted to get back to the issue raised by the chairman of the Pakistani news agency regarding partnerships. I think he's right, because we notice that big agencies are more and more reluctant to do partnership with smaller agencies, national agencies. We do understand the reasons, financial reasons. Everybody has got financial concerns, but the matter is not raising matter of raising funds. It's rather, we have to think about it as a matter of knowledge transfer. Because now, with all the changes taking place in the work of news agencies, especially using new technology, introducing videos, combating fake news, etc., I think that smaller national news agencies need some of the expertise that big agencies have in terms of training, especially. So that's, I think, a good point that was raised by the chairman of the Pakistani news agency. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, so we will now hand over to Gokuya Gata, who's killed me already, who works in the international department of the Japanese news agency Kyodo. Mr. Ogata-san.
I'm sorry, Clive, yeah. So please. Our news agency is not an international news agency, but it's not a local news agency, so it's in between. So I just want to explain to the people today what's going on in our market and what kind of challenge we are facing. So I would like to express a little bit about the outline. So, okay, my news agency, still nearly 80% of our revenue comes from the traditional media, which is newspaper, radio, and television station. So it's a very, very old type of news agency. So the thing happening is we have still 40 million circulations, and the circulation is start declining. But what is happening recently is, like last year, we lost 2 million circulation, more than 2 million circulation. So the drop is going sharply. That's the thing is what's happening right now. So this is the revenue and the ratio of the newspaper industry in Japan. So initially, 20 or 30 years ago, the revenue ratio, it was 50% was from the subscription revenue, and the 50% was from the advertising model, which is red is subscription and green is the advertising. But the advertising model is dropping sharply after the year 2000. And the blue is the other revenue, which includes digital, and which means this will be the new revenue stream. But this is not growing as we expected. So the total revenue is shrinking, and this trend is not changing. So our traditional business model is melting down. So that's the biggest challenge we're facing. So, okay, this is the advertisement expenditure by medium in Japan. So this shows that the red is television, the black is newspaper, the purple is internet. So what happened is I'm explaining to my colleagues in Japan that we're facing 3 big waves. I'm explaining that there's 3 big tsunami is hitting us. So the first wave happened in the year 1995 when Windows 95 comes to market. So that was the first wave. But the first wave, after the first wave in the Japanese market, it didn't affect the traditional media so much. But when the second tsunami hit, which was in the year 2008, this was the merge coming out of the iPad and iPhone. So when this came, what happened is, so the advertisement of internet took over the newspaper. That was the second wave. And the fall of the newspaper and the traditional media starts after this second wave. So right now I'm telling my colleagues in Japan that we're facing the third wave, which is the 5G generation. The sophisticated smartphones are coming. So what happened is we are just underway of the second wave tsunami. And what happened is we expect that this year, the internet advertisement will catch up and take over the television. So this is very important. So I'm telling that the third wave is not the end. I think another wave will come, the fourth wave will come. And I told Clive yesterday that my prediction is, for example, yeah, AI, the automatic intelligence is very important, but the key is maybe the electric vehicle. If the cars in the world will change, transfer to the electric vehicle, we think that the future of the electric vehicle will be a huge smartphone with 4 wheels. So all these vehicles will be connected to internet. So that would change a lot. So maybe we think about this fourth wave to think about the new revenue source. That's my prediction. So what's happening is our traditional media, the revenue is dropping. The overall turnout is dropping, and we're doing the cost cut program. We're trying to do as much possible to cut the cost. And we tried the digital business, and we also are doing the PR service or the digital signage. We are doing all kind of digital business, but the result is the revenue is much more less than we expected. So we cannot fill the gap. So we have to think about the new revenue stream. But the problem is that we cannot find so far the real engine to replace the old business model. That's a big problem. So what we're doing is we have to still continue to think about the new business, and we'll do investment as we can. But the reality is very difficult because the old traditional business model is melting down, and we have to find another one. But that is not happening right now. So in our case, or in the Japanese newspaper industry case, they failed to find a new revenue stream, the right one, the big one. So right now they're trying to do is, like for our case, it's the same, is the real estate or the stock. The money from the real estate and stock is the big revenue stream right now to fill the gap. So some Japanese newspapers start buying like hotels in the middle of Tokyo. So the reason why is they're doing so much business and trying to find a new revenue stream. But the reality is we still cannot find the real engine to replace the old model. So that's the reality. So I'll explain the last. So basically, my news agency is a B2B model. So, you know, if we can grow, it's very simple. We need more customers, or I would say, in our case, we say more members of the papers or members of the televisions, but that's not going to happen. Or our customers should grow. If our customers should own much more money than we expected, we can get more money from them. But right now, it's 300% impossible to charge extra money from our customers. So what we're doing is we're trying to get money from the non-media field, or we're trying to jump into the B2C area. But this is very limited and difficult because there will be a very big conflict of interest with our members of the papers or with our customers. So we cannot jump into the B2C business so deep or so far. So that is a very big dilemma and very big problem for us. So we're trying to extend the contents business as possible, but we understand that the demand is very high and huge, but on the other hand, the supply is only very big. So the price is going down, and the contents marketing business basically is in the Japanese market is oversupply. So we have a lot of competitors. So we're facing a lot of big problems. So in our news agency case, we're trying to extend, and we're doing a lot of digital business and contents marketing as well, and selling stock photos, and they're growing, but still it's not a big engine for the new revenue. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ogata-san. Any questions for our colleague from Kyoto? Ufei.
Yes, thank you. I fully understand, because coming from a media-owned company myself, before I retired, you can't compete with your owners. But when you're looking for new areas to sell your services, how far are you in specific areas of your service, refining them, like the watch media, shipping watch, media watch, you name it watch, where you can sell to specific industries in your country directly without competing with your customers. And from Denmark, I know that there's a lot of money in that.
Okay, thank you so much. The one thing, if you're talking about the new revenue streams, I think all the news agency has different situation and different circumstances. In our case, what we are doing is we are jumping into the B2C business, not only ourselves, but with our members of papers. We have 57 members of papers, and they pay a lot of money to us. So when we go to the B2C, we'll not go alone. We will ask them to do together, and we'll splitting the revenue with our members of papers. That's the model. So it's very difficult to jump in just ourselves to deal with a particular company right now. That's the thing we're facing. So the thing, these kind of conference I'm attending a lot, but I can't, just tell my dream or illusion, or I really have to be pragmatic, and we have to accept the reality that there's very, very limited thing that we can do so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Agata. Any?
Thank you very much for the comments and also the experience that they share with us from Japan. And I think three important things are driving us if we can think about how to have more revenues. One of those things, it's, I think, what my colleagues mentioned, it's thinking out of the box. It's an important thing for a news agency in different countries to find a way of new revenues. Secondly, I think working with other news agencies, B2B, as we can say, there's big corporation or big news agency around the world, and we have some local news agencies. So if they have more cooperation between them, they can have also revenue for both sides. Third, it's to be proactive in dealing with different kind of activities and trying to develop, themselves in different area. This is a trend that is happening in many other countries. So I think the points that mentioned here, thinking out of the box, it's important for us to get more and more revenue in this area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any?
You talked about expectations, revenue growth, that the revenue growth did not meet the expectations. Wouldn't this mean to think a bit ahead of our times? I mean, to start finding ways to address Generation Z or Generation Alpha, who Generation Alpha is barely walking now, but they will be in the near future the strongest generation. So they are more liberal, both Z and Alpha. I read a study recently in the United States that the vast majority of Generation Z is more it's closer to the Republican way of governing than to the Democrat way. So it's a shifting in generation, which must lead to a shift in the way news agencies address to their target audience. So did you start thinking about, I don't know, changing the ways you will address to the new generations or not?
Yeah, we're doing a lot, but our news organization is still old. The newsroom is very old. They don't want to change. They're reluctant to change. They're sticking with the old workflow, and it'll take time. So we have to do this step by step. the Japanese newspaper paper industry is still okay. It's not like what happened in UK and United States. It's the circulation. We still have money left, so we have to think in the future. Maybe before, I'm telling the people, before the full wave, we will have to reconstruct what we're doing. So, but the change the mentality, to change the workflow, is very. It's the most difficult thing. You know, you can't buy with that. You know, they have a pride, high salary. Why do we have to do this, you know, this kind of thing? So it'll take time to change the newsroom, to change our mentality, I think. That's the most important challenge for us so far. Thank you.
Just a thought. Do you think, all of you, would be good in the near future, the news agencies, both local and international, to start, I don't know, hiring these new generations from younger age and to, I don't know, maybe we to learn them and we to learn from them what's going on and what's the future?
I think that makes an awful lot of sense. Our colleague from India.
Hi, thanks a lot. So how do you cooperate with news portals such as BuzzFeed, Google, YouTube? My students consume a lot of news from something called InShots. It's a local Indian aggregator. How do you get them on board? And they have a lot of money and a lot of skills, so how do you cooperate with them? Thank you.
It will take another hour to explain about this, but shortly I'll explain. We established a company with our members of papers, and we were selling to Yahoo and Google's together. And we were splitting the revenue. We were sharing the revenue with all our members of papers. That's what we were doing. But this company is very complicated, so it's a new company, so it will take a lot of time to ask, but we established this new company last year, and it's generating, it's right now making money.
Okay, I think, right, one final question, and then we'll move on to our presentation from Reuters.
I'm from the Vietnam News Agencies. We know that many news organizations and news publishers all over the world use different business models rather than subscription or branded content. They even have e-commerce, or they do some kind of services like selling data, IT, or even act as investor. You think that the news agency, we can do something similar, or we just stick to the media products? We can do something like other news publishers or not to monetize our, make more money and have more revenues.
Yeah, definitely we have to think about that, yeah. But we have to explain to our core members of the papers, and we have to do together. That's a very, very long process, I think. And I think still each news agency has, whether it's state-owned or private or not, doesn't matter, have a different situation and different case. So they have to do, for our case, we have to do step by step, yeah. But in the future, we'll do that, yeah. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's time to hand over to Sue. I think one observation from that debate is we mustn't forget the customer. You know, in the end, our services and our businesses are going to thrive and survive if we focus on what our customers are looking for. And if we do that, then maybe we'll change our newsroom a little quicker than if we just focus on worrying about the emotions in our newsrooms, which are often very difficult to deal with. Sue, as a representative of one of the big three international news agencies, it'd be great to hear your thoughts.
Is that it? Good. Thanks, Clive. I was talking last night with Nidal and Peter from DPA about the importance of telling stories. So I'm going to tell you my story. When I first walked through the door at Reuters news agency just over 3 years ago now, everyone talked about products. There were hundreds of them. 320 products to be exact. Yet the sales teams wanted more to sell, and the product teams were busy creating more products to feed the beast. There was GNS, OLR, WNS, WNE, RVO, RVN. The acronyms went on and on. So I thought, WTF, and stopped talking to my colleagues and started talking to customers. Radical, hey? And not one of them talked about products. They talked about our world-beating journalism. They talked about how they trust us to be accurate, objective, and do the right thing. I wasn't at all surprised about that. But I really was surprised about how little Reuters customers knew about the range and breadth of what we and most of the people in this room do day in, day out. I spoke to newspapers who have video operations which would make a small broadcaster weep with envy, and yet didn't know the extent of our video operations. I spoke to broadcasters with some of the most visited websites in the world who didn't know we have a team of graphic artists producing award-winning interactives. And I spoke to platforms and signage companies crying out for ready-for-publish, machine-readable news headlines, which we've got by the bucketful. And nobody knew about it. So why was our amazing multimedia content the best-kept secret in the industry? I think it's because we sold our customers products. Products pre-packaged by us and called things like Africa Daily, Africa Journal, Core News Africa, Captioned Video Africa, or CVA, actually, in Reuters' world. Indeed, a customer in Nairobi wanting access to all the fantastic video we produce from the continent each day had to subscribe to 10, that's right, 10 different products in order to see all the things that we were all the content that we had in our pool. And because we mainly offer vertical all-you-can-eat products hose-piped into people's CMS systems, they couldn't even see what else we had, never mind buy it. It wasn't that we don't have the content, we've got tons of it, but we just keep it really hidden. Imagine going to IKEA for candles and not being able to buy or even see the mugs or the lamps or the tablecloths or the cushions. How many times have you been to IKEA or similar wanting to buy a couple of candles and come out $100 poorer or whatever it is? There's no wonder perceived wisdom in Africa was that Reuters wasn't serving the continent well. So, as the global head of product at Reuters, as I was then, I decided to smash the product, get rid of them all. We stopped all product development for a year, and we put all our content into the cloud. That's video, text, and pictures, including archives dating back to 1896, and created a one-stop shop for news, which we've called Reuters Connect. Underpinning Connect is just one product, Reuters Points. Customers subscribe to a monthly minimum of points and spend them on any content they want. In effect, we're giving our customers the power to create their own products. Customers are in total control of what to buy, what they want, when they want it. Today, it could be an interactive graphic. That'll be 4 points, please. Tomorrow, it's a live video feed. That's 25 points. It's really easy for us too, because we're now able to completely simplify our product portfolio. We don't have to train salespeople, create pricing models, contractual terms, marketing to collateral, go-to-market plans, every time we want to offer a new content set to our customers. It allows us to experiment, and we can see in real time if our newest innovations, like using AI to help us create captioned videos, for example, are successful. We're just in the process of adding audio files to help address the explosion of podcasting. Don't know whether it'll work, but we're giving it a try. Some experiments haven't worked, and that's fine. We're embracing failure as well as celebrating success as we go on this journey. And interestingly, and we didn't anticipate this, customers are telling us that Connect is helping them experiment too, because they now have the flexibility to access content without having to commit to an all-you-can-eat product. So they can play around and see what works for them without having to sign up to a big check. And of course, what we've done is lowering the barrier of entry to accessing Reuters content. So we've been able to attract new, smaller customers in new markets. The proportion of customers coming from the Middle East, Africa, and Latin America is up significantly when compared to our legacy products. We've sold product subscriptions to Aruba, the Seychelles, Malawi, Gibraltar, Kazakhstan, and many more places we couldn't reach in the past because customers there couldn't afford the old hosepipe approach of content delivery that the news agencies were providing. We've sold point subscriptions to religious organisations, NGOs, and governments who now form a very significant part of our long tail. Our biggest customers do still want their core feeds fed direct into their content management systems, but there's a chance to access additional coverage now, for example, during a big sporting event, and that means we're starting to upsell points to existing customers as well as new ones, and that's another really interesting development that we didn't particularly anticipate when we started on this journey. But if we're truly to become a one-stop shop for news, we knew we needed more content. However brilliant our journalists are, we can't be everywhere all the time. So we started approaching other media organisations to see if they would like to put their content on Connect too, leveraging our distribution network to enable them to monetize their content. We now have around 40 partners, and many more in the pipeline. Some are big players like the BBC and USA Today, while others are more niche, filling gaps in our offering like Hollywood TV and the Players Tribune. Increasingly, other news agencies, the Press Association is now one, are contributing their content too, and this is now an area, growing area of focus for us. Are we pleased? Yeah. Do they compete with us for a share of our customers' wallet? Yeah, they do. But I say bring it on. Let's grow together. If as an industry we're not prepared to disrupt ourselves, someone else will do it for us. And if we are able to find new paths to grow, we want to do it in ways which will benefit us all. Cooperate and thrive is a new mantra in our office. Looking back, it all seems so obvious. It wasn't, of course, and there were many sleepless nights and bumps in our road to growth. Some thought we were selling the family silver, and as in any organisation, there was lots of doubt because we were throwing everything in the air, actually quite literally, I suppose, and reinventing our business. But because we were working hand in glove with our customers, to Clive's point, we were able to develop the platform and be sure, as we could be, that it would all be okay in the end, because literally we had our customers with us in the sandpit. But the end never does come. Our customers are still at our side, as I say, and we're continuing to develop and learn and iterate. We're now doing weekly release cycles, and although we do plan the big picture roadmap, the rest of the time we work completely agilely. In fact, people are always asking me for my roadmap, and I say, well, I can give it to you, but it's kind of meaningless, really. I'm also often asked, what have we learnt? You won't be surprised, as I've said it several times already, the number one thing is keep your customer at your side. Even when we're mucking around in the sandpit, as I said, they know their business much more than we do. And we're increasingly not only talking to our customers other media companies, but we're talking to their customers as well to try and get a full understanding of the landscape. If we can solve our customers' problems, then our customers will value us more. We prepare for disappointments and learn from them. I know it's a terrible cliche, but we do have a culture of fail fast, learn fast at Reuters. I make no bones about the fact that I hire people that are much smarter than me, and I see my job as unblocking the drains so that they can get on with theirs. This is really, really important, I think. You have to be prepared not to be the smartest person in the room, because there'll be somebody younger and cleverer than you that knows it all, and to listen to them and learn from them. Be prepared to disrupt yourself before someone else does it for you. We did, as I said earlier, have a load of opposition about the idea of putting an end to the hosepipe view of agency products, but it's worked very well. So we thought we had to hold our noses and hold hands and jump together. And lastly, I challenge, think outside the box, clearly, but before you do, look inside it. Because like all that Africa content, you might just be surprised at what you find.
Thank you very much, Sue. So Sue is the Managing Director of the News Agency and Product at Reuters, so I'm sure many of you are customers or would like to be customers or would like to get your content on the Connect platform. Any questions for Sue?
Thank you very much. Sue, we talked about some of these things last night, and I think it might be interesting for the rest of the group as well. So how did the developments that you've just described change the structure and processes within the organization? So on the input side, what has really changed at Reuters? Thank you.
Everything's changed to a large degree. It's this idea of us being in control of the being the grown-ups that are able to tell our customers, well, you can buy this product or you can buy that product, that we're in charge of it. That has gone away. So we don't have any more, for some products we clearly do, but for the generally, we have the idea of smashing the idea of products altogether and in effect putting all our content in a big pool and giving people fishing rods to be able to fish for whatever it is they want. That kind of transfer of power has been really interesting internally.
Any more questions? Okay, a question from Efe.
I think there are some important things in the reflection that you are doing about how to get close to the customer and how you change your strategy. And I think maybe there are three main axes there in all the project, and I think everybody here is talking about this kind of things. No? And I want to know a bit more about your ideas and your discussion about how to improve your business going with a platform change, get to the closer, and the platform is changing the business model and the sales model, especially the strategy and the pricing, not trying to get the people with less subscribers, more on demand, and trying to make more dynamic the sales process. How was the diagnostic about that?
In terms of our partners, they all set their own pricing because obviously we get all kinds of competitive issues if that's not the case. So our partners set their own pricing. What we do, which is what I think is the smart bit, and we're not the only organisation that do this, is we translate, have algorithms that translate that pricing into a number of points based on where the customer is and how much they pay, the price per point that they pay, because obviously the price per point any any specific customer pays varies wherever, who they are, where they are in the world, what market they're operating in, and how they want to use the content. So we have algorithms that sort that out, if you like. So one customer will look at the platform and see a piece of content, some Clive's video, could see that for them it costs 50 points, but another customer might see that for them it only costs 5 points. And that's how we equalise that. So Clive gets the same dollar value from both customers. And I think that's the clever bit, because what it means is that the partners don't have to make several different contracts with all these different customers. We've already done that kind of heavy lifting behind the scenes.
And how is the relationship with the control of costs? Because obviously we in the news agency business, we have a lot of sunk cost. And what is the impact? Do you notice an impact in the change of the pricing, about the revenue, the profit, with the cost that is going fixed most of the time, and the prices is more dynamic? Yeah, well, how... Sorry. How you calculate or how you notice some impact on the profits, because obviously most of the cost that we have is fixed, and the price is more dynamic every day, and there are more people that is buying content on demand, and we lose subscribers. How is the impact? What is the calculation that you have about that?
Do you mean our partners, our customers who are buying points?
Yeah, and the whole business, no? Because there are an impact when we have a base that is more some subscribers, as our colleague from Japan says, and right now we have more on demand, less pricing in some cases.
That's exactly the argument when I said that we had a lot of opposition internally, and some people were thinking we were selling the family silver. Lots of people said this is cannibalization, we've got to maintain our core business at all costs. You know, this is, some people, one person threatened to resign over it and said, you know, this is a resignation issue, you are going to destroy the news agency. But we didn't. News agency revenues are growing. We're being able to get more customers. As I say, these long-tail customers that we would never have got before because they couldn't afford us. And we're able to get, obviously, partnerships, and which creates this bigger pond of content as well. So I think it's a win-win, and it is, I think, starting to help other media organisations as well. But yeah, no, there was an awful lot of opposition at first.
I have one more question from Eric, and then we must move on to...
Yes, Sue, I'm interested. We've been excuse me, Eric Wishart from AFP, because we've been talking quite a lot about podcasts, and I think you said you're moving into that. So I just wanted to ask you sort of double question. One, what kind of podcasts, what kind of content, and also how do you see news agencies monetizing podcasts?
We're batting around lots of ideas. One is to create a marketplace for podcasts, so that's one thing we're looking at. The immediate thing we're actually doing at the moment is trying to create an audio library so that organisations wanting to make their own podcasts have got the audio to do it with, to do them with it, because increasingly we're being asked for, you know, customers who are making their own podcasts want audio to help them with it, because of course they have no archives, and we have loads. Increasingly we see archives as a great monetization tool as well.
Thank you, Sue. I think there may well be a queue as you go for your coffee in the break of people wanting to get their content on the Reuters Connect platform. I'll now like to introduce Tony Gillies, who's our final presenter, who will need the machine to move the slides around. So Tony is the editor-in-chief of the Australian news agency AAP. Tony.
Okay, good morning everyone, and I'll try and keep this short if you like. We're just about to go to a break, but I want to talk about AAP's revenue journey. It's been a very interesting one. We're a commercially operated, privately owned news agency. We're established 84 years ago to save our media owners some money. And it's very much the same basis on which many news agencies have been established. Over the years, though, we've grown to become quite a versatile news agency, and we're very proud of the resilience we've had, our traditions of innovation and so on. It's been very, very good. And we're one of those agencies that don't receive revenues from our government. Anything that we do is really based on our own wit and will to survive, and that's just been the way in which we have worked all along. Over the years, we've returned some very good funds back to our media shareholders after the sales of assets and annual, or where possible, returns some dividends to our shareholders. And where that leaves us now, though, is this is our revenue split, and I've just done it in a very broad way. And you can see on the right-hand side there that the majority of our revenue still comes from our traditional operation, our newswire. That includes our racing and photographic services and so on. We also have a page-ready business. It's an editorial production business, which is very strong, representing almost 30% of our total revenue. And then we have a press release distribution and media intelligence business as well, representing 12% of what we do. These things are very good. But no matter what we do, though, and if you saw that slide before, we are very much tied to our shareholders. And here's the split. More than half of our revenue, total revenue, is tied to our owners. And while all of that business is very much appreciated, it's one we realise that we need to address. AAP has become very good at outsource services. If we're set up to establish or to help our media owners, save costs. Well, doing services on their behalf has really been a great way to do that. And we've become very, very good at it. We do a lot of work for these guys, and this is what it sort of looks like. Our outsourced services across page ready, across photographic and so on. You can see the numbers there, 105,000 pages annually for 20 newspapers, 25,000 pages annually for 15 magazines, and 500,000 stories we edit on behalf of our media owners. We shoot 20,000 news assignments, photographic news assignments each year for one major media customer, and we write and edit advertising feature pages and so on, and then we also do comment moderation, which has become quite a good business for us, and we're moving nearly 5.5 million comments online each year. These are really big things, and it's a really good business, as I said. This outsourced business. Outsourcing for us represents about 31% of our total revenues. It's a really big piece of what we do, and that's all again tied to our shareholders. The split of that 31%, more than half of that is devoted to those editorial production pages. And then 12% of it comes from photographic, and the data pages, the racing form, the puzzle pages and so on, represent 20%. Now these are very good businesses to have, don't get me wrong, but the very nature of outsourcing and outsourcing to a group of traditional media customers, well, you've got to ask yourself, how long is that business going to last? And we realise that. And so we're working very hard on diversifying what we do, and that's very, very important to us. But in the meantime, we think there's even more that we can do to help our media customers to transition their own businesses. And it's very important. You know, it's generated quite a few discussions with our shareholders at the moment about what else we can do for them, and it forms a large part of our strategy. And at the moment, we're doing a big bit of work around data on stories to see if there's some further work we can do on actually writing exclusive news stories on behalf of shareholders as well. So they're very very good things. But they're the things that we need that we have done. Now we're talking about stuff that we need to go forward. And really, to go forward, though, we do understand that, you know, while the outsourcing part is really good, we do still need to diversify. The challenge for AAP, of course, is that you know, we don't have ready access to capital at this time. And so anything that we do has to be grown organically. It has to come from the ground up. And so we've tried, sometimes failed, on a few things. And I want to just run through a few things here, things that we've also got on the roadmap as well. We learn along the way. You know, Sue was saying earlier, you fail fast and learn from those things. We do exactly that. And the first one on the list there is the advertising features. That's, you know, advertising built around you know, stories generated for certain clients. Now, we're still in the business of you know, writing content for those pages, but up until earlier this year, we were actually selling the advertising as well, and we thought that would be a very strong business. We're not quite sure where the stuff that we're doing you know, wasn't necessarily within our skill set, but we did bring some good people on board to help us with that. The challenge we had with advertising, selling advertising on behalf of our shareholders, is that our shareholders probably put a bigger benchmark on us than they do on their own salespeople, and so therefore it was a very difficult business to maintain. But in saying that, we're still doing the content for it. We're working on comment moderation is sorry, that third one there. That's a very good business for us. A lot of companies put comment moderation into an algorithm and so on, and do that on behalf of customers. But we actually use people to moderate comments. And the reason we do that is because what we have found is that the quality of the comments and the quality of that editing is absolutely crucial to you know, to that proposition, and that's working really well for us. And we've established 2 really big contracts over that, and it's worth a bit over $1 million for us at the moment in its first year. So that's very good. There's more outsourcing to come for us. You know, we're trying everything. We've tried in the past to see if we could, you know, shoot news video exclusively for television networks. It was seen as not a bad idea, but you know, we so far haven't got it up and running. However, in saying that, they're keen to talk to us still, so we'll do that over the next few weeks. We also think that in our future we see an opportunity to leverage AAP's trust and distribution, you know, right throughout its customer base. So we're talking to supporting organisations to see if we can create content and manage their data and do all of those sorts of things for them on their behalf, and possibly along the way fund the journalism that's attached to those, you know, to those sports. And create really good content that we serve back to the media at no cost. So instead, having sporting organisations and their sponsors, you know, helping us fund bona fide news for those things. We've developed a really strong fact-checking unit. That's been very good for us. We're members or signatories to the International Fact-Checking Network. That's been very good for us. We piloted 2 programs over recent state and federal elections in Australia, and that got really good coverage. And now we're talking to further partners to see if we can, you know, take that even further. We're still doing it despite the elections being over, and but we see it as an important business to have because it actually speaks to the fundamentals of what a news agency is all about. We're also talking to philanthropic and industry partners for possible other ventures to fund journalism. And yesterday we heard some really good examples of that, you know, with the democracy reporting services and so on that are existing in Canada and now New Zealand and also the UK. So we might say, we see there that there's a possibility for us to dabble into that as well. And finally, you know, digital marketing is we see that as a business of strong potential. While we didn't succeed so well on the advertising, on selling advertising, we did pick up some digital marketing skills along the way, and we've learned a lot from that. And we've also been inspired by the work of sticky content and TNR as well. So we'd like to explore that a little bit further. So there's a lot of things that we're doing, a lot of things that we've done where we have to, you know, just move with things, roll with things, try things, be prepared to fail, and be prepared to learn. And that's how we've worked. So thank you.
Thank you, Tony. Any questions for our last speaker? Question over there.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a general question for every panelist. Concerning the new technologies, the speed of the new technologies, that is something that is affecting or creating new atmosphere among the journalists of different generations. So that means that it's a challenge for everybody because the speed of new technology is very fast, and sometimes when we're supposed to be under control, the new technologies comes a new one. So that affects the sensibility of the journalists to the knowledge of how to manage with this, how to deal with that. And then when you're going to sell your products, there is another thing that it's new. So you have to put it on the table because the clients are going to say, well, I need the new technology that is now in the tendency using. So for that reason, how to deal with that? How to deal with the fact that when you're going to sell your products, there is new technologies challenge the quality of what you're producing. So, thank you.
Hi. To some extent, it comes back to what I was saying before. You have to be prepared when you're creating the products or the content in the first place, not to be the smartest person in the room anymore, because there will always be somebody somebody smarter, more digitally adept, or whatever there. And then it's a case of taking their ideas and going with them. I think the hardest thing that we face at the moment is saying, well, the hardest bit about my job is saying no, because I have people coming at me, really clever, talented people all day long from all different areas saying, what about this? We should be doing square video, we should be doing round video, we should be doing audio files, we should be doing whatever. There is so much all of the time going on, and my job is to ensure that we try and place our bets where we think that there is going to be, you know, it's not just going to be a passing phase. Because if I'd said yes to some of the ideas that have come my way, all our ways, I'm sure, every year, we would have chased lots of dreams. So the art, if you like, is placing your bet. And one of this year's bets is audio, as I mentioned earlier, and listening and learning from the younger generation of journalists and technologists who are coming in, and our customers, most important, as to what it is that they're wanting and what trends they're seeing, which will enable us to try and keep ahead of the game.
If I can just add to that, don't be afraid to partner with people. You know, we don't have to do everything ourselves. You know, to Sue's point about not trying to be the smartest person in the room, look even further afield. There are some, you know, they're great startups out there. There are great businesses already in operation doing a lot of new technologies. So we've got to look around and see if we can, you know, leverage that as well. It increases the speed to market as well.
Any other questions?
Thank you. I'm from the Namibia Press Agency. I'm just wondering, with in terms of the management part of it, how the balance is in terms of staffing between the marketing side of the story and the editorial side of story, and how do the two interact to deliver on this? Because it looks like there's something to learn from, from that model. And, anyone who has an idea of the balance in terms of the staff requirements for marketing and for editorial, and how the two interact. Thank you.
So, excuse me, at PA Group, the bit of the business that does marketing services is relatively small, so there are around 40 of us compared to hundreds on the editorial side of the business. In the past, so sort of 5 or 6 years ago, when we started this, we did use editorial staff to help produce the work, because the work was a lot more written and less visual, and it wasn't very successful. It's difficult to get journalists to understand the needs of marketers, and they don't really want to. So it's a kind of cultural challenge. So very quickly, we just established a separate team, freelancers to begin with, and then a few kind of writers, and it grew from there. We do still occasionally use people from the editorial team, particularly places like Ireland and Scotland, where if we need to do a job there, we don't have the reach within my unit to do that. But it's dependent on them doing it largely in their own time. So outside of their normal editorial commitments, they'll effectively do it as a favour or as overtime. And they, by and large, will gather material but won't do a very good job of turning it into something usable for the client, so we then have to heavily edit it to make it more marketing, if you like. We do employ a few people who previously did work for the editorial department, but not very many.
Good morning. I guess this is a follow-up to my NAMPA colleague, and it's a question for Emily. So do potential commercial clients come to the Press Association because of what you offer as a creative agency within the PA structure? Or is the draw card of PA's position and brand name as a news agency, so for example, is there an assumption or potential assumption that a client's content will reach a wider audience through PA's network and reach as a news agency? And if that exists, how do you go about managing those tensions? Thank you.
Yes, that does come up sometimes. So I used to run a department at PA that used the PA name that did this, and we called it Content for Marketing, and it was quite small, but it was growing very, very quickly, which is why we looked around for acquisitions to support it, and we bought Sticky Content. We had a big debate about, do we keep the Sticky Content name, or do we just subsume that into the PA name? And actually, PA is very well known in the media, it's very well known by people in the communications business, but not at all by marketers. They've just never heard of it. They've perhaps seen it come up on the football results on a Saturday on TV, but that's it. So we actually kept the Sticky Content name, and by and large, people come direct to Sticky Content and very, very rarely through PA. Having said that, having a large parent company with such a strong reputation really helps when you go in to pitch for new business, because you're not seen as a small agency. You've got 150 years of weight behind you and all the infrastructure that comes with that, such as 24/7 technical support, all of those kinds of things. In terms of that sort of conflict, we do occasionally get clients who ask if they work with us, whether the material that we produce for them will end up on the PA wire. In the case of Sticky, it won't. It's just not suitable. It's just pure marketing material. For TNR, it's slightly different because it's PR content, so it could be potentially of interest to the news desk. So what we say is we can't promise anything, but we can make sure they've seen it. They've seen it. If they think it's a great story, they're allowed to run it. If they don't want to, they don't have to. There is an advantage we can use. So what we say is, particularly in TNR, over 90% of the videos that we create, PR videos we create for clients, will end up running on the PA video wire as editorial stories, simply because we turn loads of them down. So we turn down all the ones we know have no editorial value at all. And we work with the clients where we say, actually, you've got a really great story here, and not only will PA pick it up, we think you'll get a lot of pickup from other media outlets too. So we could, but we make no bones about being blunt with clients and saying we just don't think this is an interesting story, and part of what they come to you for is that consultancy and that expertise to be able to say that.
Thank you, Emily. Any last questions before we have our coffee break? Okay, well, I'd just like to ask you all to put your hands together for what I think has been a fascinating discussion. Thank all our panelists. And I think coffee is now served. Thank you.